Hi there. For our section, we did chapter 20, and that's rebuilding of old buildings. And the basic translation of this goes as, I restored the Capitol and the theater of Pompeii, both things at great expense without inscribing my own name on either. I restored the channels of the aqueducts, which were falling into disrepair in many parts due to age, and I brought back water from a new spring into the Marcian aqueduct, doubling the supply. I finished the Forum of Caesar and the basilica between the temples of Castor and Saturn, tasks that my father began and almost finished. And when that same basilica was destroyed by fire, I began to rebuild it on an enlarged site, to be dedicated in the name of my sons. And in case I do not complete it in my lifetime, I have given orders that it should be completed by my heirs. In my 6th consulship, I restored 82 temples of the gods in the city on the Senate's authority, neglecting nothing that required restoration at that time. In my 7th consulship, I restored the Via Flamia from the city to as far as Rimini, together with all the bridges except that of the Mulvian and the Minucian. Now, we come to analyze this passage. First, we're going to do so historically and then textually. Historically, the theater of Pompeii was built in 7 years and dedicated in 55 BC before it had been fully completed. It encompassed a large theater with an even larger courtyard behind it. In the opposite end of the courtyard was the building often used for the senatorial meetings where Julius Caesar was assassinated. Next, Augustus rebuilds the channels of the Aqua Marcia, the longest of 11 aqueducts in Rome. He then goes on to mention the finishing of the Forum of Caesar, which was an extension of the Roman Forum. Then, his most important reconstruction was the restoration of the Via Flamina, which was one of the main roads leading in and out of Rome. At the end of this section, Augustus mentions the Milvian Bridge, which later becomes the site of Constantine I's Christian revelation during the Battle of the Milvian Bridge against Maxentius, in which before battle Constantine had a vision of a Latin cross superimposed on the sun, and was told to paint the sign of the Christian God onto the shields of his men. If he were to do this, he would win that day. After Constantine had won the battle, he named Christianity the religion of the Roman state. And when it comes to the textual analysis, this part of the Res Gestae deals with buildings which Augustus rebuilt during his time as emperor of Rome. Augustus uses this as a form of propaganda to make himself look generous, like an even immaculate ruler. First, he mentions the Capitol and the theater of Pompeii, both being of great expense, and his name being on neither. By saying without inscribing my name on either, he gives a common person that the feeling that he gave them the theater with no need for even getting recognition in return, which makes him seem like a total bro. After the theater of Pompeii and the Capitol, he mentions the aqueducts, which supplied the city with their water, furthering the idea of him being a divine ruler by giving them the things that they need that are essential for life. Further, by mentioning the building of the Forum of Caesar and the Basilica, he almost holds himself above his own father, Julius Caesar, by completing the buildings which his father could not finish. Then Augustus goes on to mention the rebuilding of 82 temples that are dedicated to the gods, giving the people hope by restoring their places of worship and saying on the Senate's authority, trying to portray himself as something less than a dictator, simply commanding that all these things built. Lastly, he talks about the remaking of the Via Flamina to Rimini, showing his ability to reform an empire. All of these examples lead to the obvious attempt made by Augustus to leave his mark on the Roman and world history.